Have you ever left a room and felt the air still holding your presence, like something about you lingered even in silence? Now imagine doing that to a man's heart. Once, just once. And without knowing why, he can't stop thinking about you, aching for you, missing something he never even knew he needed until you were gone. Creating an emotional imprint that lingers long after you've left the room is not about being dramatic or overtly seductive. It's about offering a feeling so profound, so intimately tailored to his emotional core, that it becomes unforgettable without him even realizing why. When someone feels deeply seen, heard, and understood in your presence, when they feel safe to let their guard down, laugh from their belly, share a memory they didn't know they still carried, or experience a version of themselves they rarely show, the brain forms a connection between that feeling and you. It's not about overwhelming him with attention or being constantly available. In fact, it often works best when the moment is fleeting yet emotionally potent. Think of it like a favorite song that plays once at the right moment. It doesn't need to be on repeat to be remembered. Maybe it's the way you listened without interrupting when he talked about something no one else asks about, or the genuine spark in your eyes when you told him what you admire in him that no one else sees, or even a subtle pause before you walked away, leaving space for him to wonder, what just happened? This isn't manipulation, it's resonance. You're tuning into who he is beneath the armor, and for one brief, almost sacred moment, holding that reflection up to him without asking for anything in return. That's what sticks. Physical attraction might pull someone in, but emotional imprint keeps them haunted in the best way, by a feeling they can't recreate anywhere else. It's in how you made him feel like the most fascinating man in the world for 5 minutes without trying to own him, fix him, or prove yourself. And because it's rare, because most people either overshare, overplay, or hold back entirely, your presence becomes a kind of soft disruption in his routine emotional programming. Long after you're gone, long after the lights go out, his mind replays it not because he chooses to, but because the nervous system remembers intensity tied to authenticity. He won't cry because of loss in the usual sense. He'll feel an ache he can't name, a yearning that comes from encountering something real and realizing he might not get it again. That is the kind of power that doesn't shout or chase. It lingers quietly in the back of his mind, echoing every time someone else almost, but never quite, feels like you. The power of soft detachment lies in the subtle but undeniable message that you are fully capable of loving someone without needing them to complete you. And that paradox is incredibly compelling. When you show someone that you are present, attentive, and emotionally available, but also grounded in your own sense of independence, you create a tension that's both comforting and unnerving, a beautiful contradiction that keeps them emotionally engaged even when you're not around. It's not coldness, indifference, or aloofness. Rather, it's the quiet confidence of someone who gives with intention, not desperation. Soft detachment is that moment when you're fully in the conversation, laughing, listening, maybe even holding eye contact longer than usual. But there's still something about you that feels like you're not giving it all away. You're not withholding, you're simply not clinging. You love generously, but your self-respect stands quietly beside you like an unspoken boundary. Most people either try too hard to be loved or push others away to protect themselves. But when you walk the line between intimacy and self-containment, it hits differently. He can feel it when you're with him, that you care, that you're invested, but that your life will move forward with or without him, and that subtle emotional self-sufficiency makes him want to be part of your world rather than feeling obligated to complete it. There's a magnetism in being with someone who can enjoy connection without fearing loss, who doesn't ask for constant reassurance, but instead offers a sense of peace that doesn't beg to be kept. When you lean in and connect, then lean back without making it a power play, it creates a rhythm that keeps his attention organically. It's in your ability to give affection without chasing, to walk away after a vulnerable moment without acting like it owed you something in return, to not panic in silence but trust the silence to speak for itself. He'll start to question why your presence feels so grounding and your absence so noticeable, even though you never demanded anything from him. That gentle but unmistakable pull is created when he senses that you enjoy his company but do not depend on it to feel whole. You're not making a statement or playing a role. You're just living from a place where your emotions are strong but not consuming, where your love is honest but not needy. This kind of energy can't be faked, and that's why it affects him on a level that bypasses logic and lands straight in the emotional subconscious. He doesn't just notice the difference, he feels it in the quiet moments. When he starts missing you, not because you left him, but because he realizes you never tried to trap him, and yet somehow he still can't stop thinking about you. Mirroring his emotional depth and then stepping back is one of the most subtly powerful things you can do to leave a lasting impression, because it's about creating connection through emotional intelligence and then letting him feel the weight of that connection in solitude. When someone opens up to you, truly opens up, it's often not because you asked the perfect question, but because you held a kind of space where vulnerability felt safe, unjudged, and welcome. You listened not just with your ears, but with your whole presence. You weren't distracted, you didn't rush to fix or advise, you simply met him where he was. And in doing so, you reflected a version of him he may not show to the world very often. That moment, even if brief, creates emotional intimacy that goes beyond surface level attraction. It taps into something deeper, something human and rare. But the second part is what makes this truly powerful. After giving him that emotional mirror, you step back. Not dramatically, not coldly, just calmly, without neediness or pressure. You don't chase or hover or wait for validation. You leave space, and in that space, something starts to shift inside him. Because most people, when granted access to someone's emotional world, tend to either cling or retreat completely. But when you strike that perfect balance, showing that you're capable of real emotional connection, and also of walking away without falling apart, it triggers a level of reflection in him that can't be forced. He begins to notice the silence, not because it's empty, but because it's full of everything you shared. He replays the moment in his mind, wonders why it mattered so much, tries to make sense of the way you saw him when he wasn't performing or trying to impress. And because you're not there to keep feeding that connection with words or presence, he's left to sit in the afterglow of it alone. That's when it hits him, slowly, unexpectedly, and deeply. He feels an emotional ache, not tied to loss, but to recognition. Something about your presence allowed him to experience himself differently, and now your absence gives that experience space to echo. It's not just that he misses you, it's that he misses the version of himself he was in your presence. The raw, open, unfiltered self that felt safe and understood. And the fact that you didn't try to hold on to him or remind him of what you shared only intensifies that impact. Your quiet retreat says, I saw you, I valued it, and I don't need to possess it. That's rare. Most people want closure or clarity or commitment right away. But you didn't ask for anything, you simply let the moment stand on its own. That grace leaves him sitting alone with a feeling he can't quite name, a longing he can't easily satisfy, and a memory of connection that becomes more valuable the more he realizes he can't find it again in the usual places. Surprising a man with your self-worth means showing him something he doesn't expect, not because you're performing or pretending, but because most people are either too afraid to value themselves or too loud about proving that they do, and you do neither. You exist in a state of quiet confidence that says, I want you, but I don't need you. And that is both attractive and disarming. When someone expects validation or emotional dependence and instead meets someone who is warm, engaged and open, but grounded, self-respecting and untouchable in the best way, it challenges their perception of control and shifts the dynamic in a way they can't immediately process. You're not emotionally unavailable, but you're emotionally unshakable. You can have deep conversations, share vulnerable truths, laugh until you're breathless, and still walk away knowing that none of it defines your worth. You don't panic when he pulls back. You don't spiral when he's distant. And you don't mold yourself to be more likable or accommodating just to maintain his interest. Instead, you radiate this energy that says you know what you bring to the table, and if he doesn't see it or handle it well, you won't argue or beg, you'll simply step away with grace. That kind of self-worth is rare because it's not ego, it's not cold detachment, and it's not arrogance. It's the inner peace that comes from knowing that being chosen by someone else is. And when a man who's used to being the one in control, the one who calls the emotional shots, meets someone who doesn't flinch, chase or collapse when things shift, it forces him to confront something new. He starts to wonder why you're not trying harder, why you're not more affected, why you're still glowing even in his absence. And that contrast, the quiet power of someone who values herself deeply without having to explain it, creates emotional confusion in him that often feels like loss even if nothing has technically ended. He may not cry because you left. He might cry because your presence showed him what it means to be with someone who is not looking to be completed, saved, or validated. You made him feel seen and accepted, but you never made yourself small to keep him comfortable. You weren't trying to prove your worth, you were simply being, and in that being you reminded him of everything that real, grounded love feels like: safe, steady, strong, and unattached to outcome. He could sense that you would never stay where you weren't respected, and even if he didn't say it, that truth echoed inside him. People don't cry because they lost someone who begged to stay. They cry because they lost someone who knew how to leave, not out of bitterness, but out of self-respect. You didn't make him feel like you were above him. You made him feel like you were deeply with him, and yet fully able to walk alone, and that's what he'll never forget. Triggering a man's inner protector isn't about acting helpless or pretending you need saving. It's about allowing him to experience what it feels like to care about someone he knows could walk away at any time with her dignity fully intact. When a man feels that he's in the presence of someone valuable, someone rare, who is both emotionally available and deeply self-possessed, he starts to sense that he's not just gaining something by being with her. He could very easily lose something if he doesn't protect it. This doesn't mean manipulating him into fear or insecurity. It means being the kind of woman who brings such peace, warmth, and emotional depth into his life that he can't help but feel a sense of responsibility, not in a burdensome way, but in an instinctive one. You don't demand that he step up. You simply live in such alignment with your own worth that he either rises to meet you or begins to feel the emotional gap he can't quite fill with anyone else. There's a calm power in being kind, open, and loving, while simultaneously making it clear that your standards are not flexible and your presence is not guaranteed and freely, but with discernment. When you listen without judgment, support without enabling, and love without losing yourself, You awaken something primal in him, a need to hold on to what feels both sacred and strong. And when you do all of this without ever saying, "You need to protect me," or "You better not lose me," it's even more powerful, because now it's not about words or threats, it's about energy. He begins to feel that your absence would cost him something far greater than your physical presence. It would mean the loss of emotional sanctuary, of someone who saw him beyond the surface and made him feel safe to be both powerful and flawed. That's when he starts checking in more, leaning in harder, even when he can't explain why. He might not call it protecting, but his actions will start to mirror the instinct to hold you closer. Not because you're fragile, but because he realizes you're rare and could disappear without drama or warning. And that subtle fear, the fear of not being the man who stepped up when he had the chance, does something to his heart. It stirs a quiet urgency, a desire not just to keep you, but to be the version of himself that would deserve to. He might not cry because of heartbreak in the traditional sense, but he'll feel the heaviness of what it means to come close to something profound and realize he's the one who must choose to protect it or risk the regret that follows. For him to commit one act of protectionist humanity, you didn't put him in that position with demands or ultimatums. You placed him there simply by existing with strength, softness, and standards that don't waver in the face of temporary affection. Making silence speak louder is one of the most underestimated yet deeply impactful ways to leave a lasting emotional impression on someone, especially a man who's used to noise, chaos, or constant reassurance in relationships. When you've shared a meaningful emotional connection, whether through vulnerability, laughter, depth, or simply being truly present, and then you deliberately pull back, not in anger or spite, but in peace, it creates a space where your absence becomes louder than your words ever could. Most people fill that space with explanations, with follow-ups, with attempts to keep the connection alive. But when you don't, when you allow the moment to breathe and end naturally, he begins to feel a dissonance that doesn't make sense at first. He'll replay the last conversation, the way you looked at him, the feeling he had when he was with you, and the striking quiet that followed. You didn't vanish, you just stopped trying to extend something that already made its impact. And now that silence becomes a container for everything you didn't say. It's not passive aggression, and it's not withdrawal meant to manipulate. It's trust. Trust in the fact that what you brought was real, and you don't need to chase to prove it. That kind of emotional maturity stands out because it's so rare. Most people associate love with constant access, immediate replies, or consistent affirmation, but when you've given something real, and then let it go without clinging, the silence left behind starts to echo in ways words can't. Now, he won't understand why he's thinking about you at 2 a.m., why a certain song suddenly feels like it's about you, or why a quiet room reminds him of a moment you shared that he didn't even realize meant so much. It's because you left emotion in the air, unforced, unresolved, and unforgettable. Silence, when paired with a genuine emotional connection, becomes a mirror. It reflects everything he felt but didn't say, and everything he misses but didn't realize he wanted. In that stillness, his own emotions rise to the surface, not because you're prompting them, but because you're not. And that lack of prompting makes them more powerful. He can't say you manipulated him. He can't accuse you of playing games, because all you did was stop talking and start trusting. Through that space gives him the opportunity to feel what he might have missed in the moment, the value of your presence, the rarity of your energy, the ease and depth you brought without demanding anything in return. And because humans are wired to seek closure or understanding, that emotional loop stays open in his mind. He'll feel the weight of it when he least expects it, and because the silence wasn't angry but respectful, It leaves room for growth, reflection, and a haunting sense of what it meant. That's when he begins to cry, not always with tears, but with the ache of something powerful left unsaid, not because you withheld, but because you knew when to stop talking and let the feeling speak for itself. And that's the real secret. None of this is about playing games or crafting a performance to make someone feel something artificial. It's about mastering the art of emotional presence and graceful detachment, of showing up fully and honestly, then stepping back with the quiet confidence that your energy speaks louder than your words ever could. When you love from a place of strength, when you reflect his depth and then release it without chasing, when you leave behind not a void, but a memory rich with truth, you create an emotional echo that he can't quite shake. He won't cry because you manipulated him or because you begged for his affection. He'll cry because something in you awakened something in him. And once a man has felt that kind of connection, the rare mix of softness, self-respect, and soulful impact, he won't be able to forget it. He might not even understand why, but he'll feel it in the quiet moments, in the silence after the noise, and in the space where your absence still feels beautifully loud.